As a cultivation genius who has achieved a new realm every 2 years since he was a year old, Wang Ling is a near-invincible existence with prowess far beyond his control. But now that he's 16, he faces his greatest battle yet, senior high school. With one challenge after another popping up, his plans for a low-key high school life seem further and further away. After the Sunland incident, the narrator explains how Froggy 2 found a liking to Wang Ling and moved to his house to seek solace. One night, Froggy 2 wakes up after a short nap and finds Wang Ling typing furiously into his gaming laptop. Puzzled by Wang's focus on the laptop, Froggy 2 gets up from his bed and gets to Wang's desk to talk to him. There, Wong's spirit helper pops out of his body in his spiritual form and urges Froggy 2 not to disturb the Swordmaster, aka Wong, as he does his thing. When he is asked why Wong is doing such a complex-looking task on his laptop, the spiritual dude tells Froggy that he's doing that to prevent a certain someone, aka Sun Rong, from discovering his powers. At that point, Wong finishes his code. He summons his weird little way of heaven elf, Ling Fei, to his desk and asks it to do something to the jargon he just typed on his laptop. The elf comes to life and shoots a beam from his ease onto the computer screen, causing the string of codes to activate. When his program pings are successful, Wong heaves a sigh of relief as he continues thinking of what to do after doing his code. Froggy 2 notices everything that Wong does and asks him why he didn't just wipe Sun Rong's memories instead. Wong tells him about the terrible side effects wiping someone's memory can cause and lets him know that it's safer this way. Froggy turns to the spiritual dude from earlier and asks him about Wang's power and connection to the way of heaven. The spiritual dude tricks Froggy 2 into believing Wang was a weak-ass MF with only a little power. And guess what? The insecure Froggy 2 believed it. Anyways, the next day, Wang Ling gets up early and prepares for school that day. Before leaving the house, he receives texts from Sun Rong, who just found out how powerful Wang was. From the looks of things, Sun was trying to let him know that her little lips were sealed, as she didn't plan on exposing his secret anytime soon. She also reminds him of their test that was to happen that day, but then Wang quickly changes the conversation to talk about his incarnation phase. Soon, he gets bored of the conversation and stops the conversation so he can get to school early. Moments before leaving for school, Wang's goofy-off father shows up with a weird-looking device he claims to have been made from Wang's Way of Heaven programming formula the previous night. The device is known to wipe the memory of a person who's unfortunate enough to get irradiated by the beams. Knowing his goofy father pretty well, Wang keeps quiet and watches the doofus perform the ritual on himself. Just as Wang was about to stop him, his dad irradiated himself and erased his memories for the next half hour. As if that wasn't enough, Wang's dad still wanted to give the device another try. Poor guy. Wang gets up and stops his dad from getting attacked by himself. He collects the device from his dad and walks out on him to get to school, despite his dad's pleas to get it back. Wang gets to his school where students walk like stick figures and gets to class on time with Chen, who's as frivolous as ever. One of the dudes in class brings Chen down his high horse so he can be mentally ready for their class. Soon, Teacher Pan shows up to instruct them on the latest news. Judging by how strict she is, Teacher Pan tells the students the bad news about their art teacher, who's literally outside the classroom, called in sick. The art teacher, who was just outside the classroom back then, opens the door to start his class, but then Teacher Pan slaps him out of class so she can take over. Chen faints as his hopes and dreams of beating Wang Ling in the physical arts class were shattered in an instant. With that out of the way, Teacher Pan substitutes art class for swordsmanship class with Teacher Wang. There's a little murmur from the students, which ticks Teacher Pan a little bit. Before leaving the students for their next class, she dares anybody to discuss their problem with her decision with her in her office. Knowing fully well that she can cultivate the devil himself, the students shut the hell up and follow her decision. This time, Wang Ling takes out his dad's device and thinks about what he's going to use it for. Moments later, everybody gathers in the school's new gymnasium to train themselves for their next class. While some people skip the rope till they levitate, others bounce basketballs at high speeds till they crush their nutsacks. Either way, everyone's doing something very productive with themselves. A few minutes later, their extra-large teacher shows up with a golden orb in his hand and uses it to display a screen on top of his head. A Shifu with long white hair holds a glowing sword as he stands in place to have his picture taken. Teacher Wong introduces the Swordmaster as the legendary Fan Rui, whose whereabouts are unknown. From history, he's known to have mastered the Way of Heaven swordsmanship and can use all 3,000 Ways of Heaven strikes to do considerable damage to the bad dudes. This information causes ripples of murmurs in the students. One of them, a chubby one, reminds Teacher Wong of their status and lets him know that it'll be impossible for them to learn the ropes around the art. Like any math teacher from high school, Teacher Wong wasn't going to let his students off easily. So he summons the wordless book on the yin-yang platform and encourages the students to try their luck in learning the swordsmanship levels. When he's ready to begin the lecture, he walks over to the platform, opens the book, and tells the students to gather their spiritual force at their palms before imbuing it into the book to reveal the level of swordsmanship they can learn at that time. Once the swordsmanship book receives its spiritual force, it displays a fighting animation to showcase the level of their spiritual powers. Since everyone pretty much understands his point, they all get ready to begin the test. Teacher Wang calls the first student, Ku Xuan, to come to showcase his power to the book. After bragging over how negligible he's been treated in the past, being the writer of the series, he creates the green mist around his hands and punches the wordless book. At the time, Wang teleports into his inner mind and asks his elf, Ling Fei, to take control of his power when it's his turn so he doesn't end up destroying the gym again. As a bribe, he gives Ling Fei a bag of crispy noodles and leaves things to him. Just then, Ku Xuan fails the test miserably and gets a failing grade. The teacher calls the next person on the list Chen, the frivolous dude who comes forward with a golden hue around his body and finally activates one of the levels in the wordless book. Teacher Wang recognizes that phase as the third phase of the swordsmanship level and passes him instantly. The next person, Wang Ling, is called up to do his part. Wang breathes in as his spirit helper dude asks him what to do. Wang urges him not to worry too much about him and just focus on controlling his power. Before letting Wang do anything, Teacher Wang shows him proof of insurance that the school had to buy for the gym to ensure the safety of the property. Furthermore, he explains just how impeccable the school building is, letting the students know that it was almost impossible to bring such a structure down. Nonetheless, Wang moves forward, bends on his knees, and places his hands gently on the wordless book. He releases an ounce of his spiritual energy and causes a large release of spiritual energy that creates a hole in the gym ceiling. Wang gets a little sad as he knows he just messed it all up again. This time, however, his spiritual force causes a large, gigantic golden sword to appear up in the sky and stab the land. By this time, everyone was either almost dead or fainted. Wong uses the art of restoration to restore the building to its normal structure. To make sure Rong doesn't remember what she just saw, he uses the device on her and wipes her memory. Rong faints, but then Teacher Wang commands his people to take her to the infirmary. Elsewhere, the legendary swordsman notices the sword from the sky and gets interested in getting an heir to take his place when his scraggly ass ain't on Earth anymore. He does a little voodoo movement with his white sword and gets himself ready to go scouting for his successor. Meanwhile, the 4 remaining members of the faction of the 4 Emblems host a meeting to discuss their state of affairs. Before they kickstart the meeting, they pay their respects to the legendary swordmasters, Fan Rui and Chen Nanchuan. Shortly afterward, the 3 of them settle down around the round table to discuss their 4th brother, Qing Zhao, who was absent from the meeting at the time. After raising the question, one of the brothers gets up to tell the other about Jiao's important mission for the day. Surprised, the other brother asked him what Jiao could be doing to warrant such questionable actions. Well, it turns out that the great Jiao was busy in an arcade glaring at his new overall high score in all of the arcade games in that shop. With different people staring at how ridiculous his high score was, Jiao stands there like a little boy who just won himself some cotton candy and admires his minuscule success. Elsewhere, Sun Rong's grandpa, Mr. Rong, receives the family doctor's visit to check up on his granddaughter, Sun Rong, who fainted after Wong used the device on her. After checking her vitals, the doctor passes her as okay. Meanwhile, Mr. Rong became worried sick over Sun Rong's eagerness to always surpass her limits and hoped she would just calm down when she could to avoid turning out this way. Eventually, Mr. Rong gets the memo after throwing a fuss over his granddaughter having a seemingly incurable disease. Dr. Lee sighs over the expressive display of regret and sorrow from Grandpa and his daughter and urges them to calm down as there is nothing wrong with Sun. Mr. Rong gets a little curious and asks the doctor why his granddaughter fainted earlier. The doctor tells him it may be psychological. To keep those 2 out of his hair, Dr. Lee hands Mr. Rong a pamphlet and tells him to follow the instructions written there so they can all get to the Chrysanthemum Island Sanitarium to get her checked for psychosis. Mr. Rong gets very happy at this, but then again, Lee tells him the place isn't fully built yet, so they had better be careful. Mr. Rong thanks the doctor for the visit and turns on his TV to watch the news. There he finds out that the construction of the chrysanthemum was already underway, and this was surprising to him. In the meantime, Wong gets himself in a yellow hoodie before stepping out of his place to visit Sun Rong, who's been crushing on him like forever. His mom noticed the absurd wardrobe choice and called him out on it. With Wong being Wong, he simply didn't care, as bro was just living in a world of his own, and even better, he wasn't any simp. Eventually, his mom manages to change his mind, and Wong puts on a weird robe. Upon getting to the chrysanthemum, Wong stands at the front gate, expecting an open sesame or something. Before the door opens for him, Wong spectates his friends talking about Sun Rong and her illness on the group chat. Thinking Wong was off the list, everyone suggested he goes to visit her during the weekend, since he's usually the unemployed guy. Moments after reading through the messages, the door to the sanitarium opens up, and Wong walks in like a slow poke. A robot greets him and welcomes him to the sanitarium. Rong, who was just going on about her day, spots Wang coming into the building she was in, and rushes to greet him from her window, like a sorority sister who just got reunited with her toxic frat boy ex of 2 years. Wang remains calm as always as they walk through heavy military-grade surveillance to get to Rong's room. Meanwhile, Mr. Rong and a simp in a suit who likes Rong but doesn't have the balls to ask her out are seen in the control room, watching all of Wong's moves. The simp tries talking to Mr. Rong out of letting Wong see his babe, but Mr. Rong was an OG without a doubt who understood the game when he saw one. So, he ignored the coward and let Wong riz his daughter up. To make matters worse, he invites Froggy2 to his control room and lets him have front row seats to watch his master at work. The simp was petrified. Froggy2 starts by introducing himself to the simp, praising his master Wong when he gets the chance to make sure Mr. Rong knew his daughter was in good hands. As for the simp, he pacifies himself by recalling the beachside memories he's had with Rong when they were younger, and reassures himself that Rong won't fall for a goofball. After getting Wong into her room, soon Rong gets very excited and rushes over to check through the gifts Wong bought for her, hoping to see one of his gifts there. When she doesn't find one, she gets pissed off. Wong notices this and decides to do something about it. He takes out a pack of raccoon snack noodles, the Golden Collector's Edition, aka the most treasured item in his arsenal, and hands it over to her. Rong is very happy to finally receive something valuable from her crush. Soon, a robot interrupts their good time together and reminds Rong about her rehabilitation test in the in-house arcade. Rong takes Wang to the arcade and registers her ID as Agan before entering the empty arcade to continue doing her thing. Rong rushes over with Wong to one of the machines there where she tries hard to pick a toy for herself. After trying and failing woefully, Wong moves over to another one. Before trying his luck, the simp from earlier, who was watching them from the big screen, texts one of the people in charge to make sure Wong doesn't get a good pull on his first try. Now, if that's not pathetic, tell me what is. Anyways, Wang notices the play going on and tries his best to beat the system. When normal tactics wouldn't work, he uses some wind energy to raise as many toys into the drain as possible. Guess what? Simp's face was petrified, whereas Mr. Rong was only impressed by this display and even likens Wang to his younger self. As for the other games of luck and chance, Wong ends up defeating every single one of them, and Mr. Rong was enjoying every single bit of it. Simp tried raising the difficulty of each game to the hardest, but Wong ended up destroying the odds and making them work in his favor. During the basketball game, he uses cyclone energy to make the ball enter the basket that the simp reduced earlier. While all that happens, Zhao, who was in the arcade at the time, notices this Agon person surpassing his highest score of 11,000 and complains about it. When the time comes for Wong to slash open a giant orb of energy, he slams a hole into the wall and destroys the entire machine. At this point, the high score reader couldn't even read Agan's high score anymore. And boy oh boy was Zhao pissed. When Wong's done rizzing Rong up, he cashes in the points he's gotten over the times and gets a raccoon gift for Rong to seal the deal. Damn, Wong's got game. As for Zhao, he ends up destroying his sword before swearing revenge against Wang Ling for beating his high score. By evening time, Wong joins up with Froggy2 before leaving for his house. On their way home, Froggy2 warns Wong about annoying a particular member of the Four Emblem faction, Zhao Qing, and lets him know that Zhao may get his revenge against him. Wong, who's a top G himself, isn't scared of anybody, and instead tells Zhao to bring it on. In another meeting between the Four Emblem faction, the 3 remaining members pay their respects as usual and get around the table to discuss their affairs. Still, Qing Zhao is absent again, and the concerned leader asks for some explanation. One of the leaders there gets up and explains the situation to the concerned leader. Apparently Zhao was pissed that a measly nobody named Digan whooped his ass in the arcade game and got a higher score than he did. As such, he plans to take his revenge against the person who he later finds out to be Sun Rong. The member urges their leader to stay jiggy and allow Zhao to finish his mission and capture Rong. At that instant, Teacher Pan and Teacher Wang watch a news report about one of the major developments in their city. The news reporter walks over to a programmer in an internet company while he is working out to ask him a few questions about their recent project. Teacher Wong pauses the feed and complains about their physical art classes being way behind schedule following the recent completion of their underground gym. Teacher Pan, who seems to have a passionate hatred towards physical arts, barges in on Teacher Wang during his thinking session and tells him not to worry too much about making the students proficient in physical arts. Rather, they should teach them more about writing and reciting so they can become weaker in the future. Teacher Wong isn't about to allow a miserable teacher like Pan to ruin his only subject, so he gets up and counters her comments about physical arts. While all this happens, the master from earlier, who was seeking an heir to take his place as Sword Saint, approaches the door to the staff room and overhears both teachers bickering at each other. He opens the door nonchalantly and catches Teacher Pan making weird mating poses at the fatso, Teacher Wong. Teacher Wong stops his bickering when he finds the scraggly old man standing behind him and looks behind to check him out. On realizing that he's the Sword Saint, Teacher Wong pays his respects. However, Teacher Pan wasn't so eager to show her respect, but then again, the Sword Saint showed them 10% of his power, hoping it would be enough for them to make him the interim physical arts teacher. Teacher Wong asks him if he's there on important business, and the Sword Saint, who calls himself Yi, tells them he's there to select a fine warrior to be his heir after he dies. Almost immediately, Teacher Wang picks Yi up and shows him outside to talk to him privately, leaving the bitter and miserable Pan behind in the staff room. Pan gets a little jealous of what is going on, but then reassures herself that nobody can beat her when it comes to occupying class. A few days later, Sun Rong and the other students start noticing their new art teacher and Teacher Wang strolling around the yard. She and a few other students complain about the master's physical state, seeing as he's pretty weak for a Sword Saint. While the others complain, Wang and his spiritual helper dude discuss what could have made such a powerful person come here to their faction. Eventually, they conclude that he must be out looking for an heir to his throne, as his time was already near. Wang assures his helper that he's pretty confident that he's as average as he can be when compared to the others. His spiritual helper, dude, frowns at the obvious lie, but then gets back to his place to allow Wang to take his class in peace. A few minutes later, Teacher Pan walks into the room to address the students on a thing or two about their art teacher. She tells them Teacher Yi can't start teaching them anytime soon as he's still getting to know their faction. In the meantime, she'll be taking them on a pop quiz from hell itself, and the students have no choice but to take the quiz. Wong, who was already getting pretty tired of the class, checks his radar inside his notebook and finds Jiao heading in hot to their faction. At the same time, the loser Jiao, who was flying on his skateboard, noticed someone spying on him but couldn't pinpoint who the person was. Concurrently, Teacher Yi and Teacher Wong finish testing each other's strengths before the final hire, and Wong is pretty impressed by how good Teacher Yi is with his stuff. While Yi chills out in the meadows, Sun, Wong, Chen, Guo, and one other girl walk out of the building to find their teacher standing on the grass somewhere. They pay their respects to the teacher and say goodbye before walking back to the class. Yi calls them back and tells them about the devil's advocate posing as a teacher, Teacher Pan. He makes sure to tell all of them just how badly Pan wanted him gone and wishes they could work together to make sure that they start their physical art class before it's too late. To do this, he lets out a strong golden aura from his body that causes all the students except Wang to fall. Once he's done with that, he does some high-level levitation to further impress his students. Chen gets very depressed, as he doesn't think they can learn the levitation technique before they graduate. Yai gives them a brief explanation of the art, and makes Sun Rong think well to come up with a way they can take their physical arts class. In the meantime, Jiao passes a landmark in Sun Rong's faction, and takes another look at the little girl who claimed his glory from the arcade. He finds it hard to locate her in the vast city, and curses to torture her for 49 days with his art so she can regret ever crossing him. Back at the school, the students kickstart their plans. Sun Rong and Wong get to the staff room to call Teacher Pan for the morning self-study. They make it seem like they're very enthusiastic to learn whatever the heck she has for them. They plan to overwork Teacher Pan until she's tired of teaching them. By lunchtime, Chen and Wong show up to ask her for another class before she eats her lunch. Again, Pan does the same thing and ends the class on time. After the second class, she gets back to her office. As she's about to settle down, Go shows up with Wang to call Pan to the classroom again. Pan, who's tired already, still manages to take the third class. By the time she is done with them, she returns to the office and locks the door behind her to prevent any students from coming in to call her for another class. Minutes later, Wong, Rong, and one other girl show up to call Pan to teach them. This time, they find the door locked and are shocked over what to do at the moment. Since there were no security cameras in the hallway at that time, Wong used 0.001% of his powers to smash open the door. Even then, he still manages to create a hole in the door and startle Pan, who was already terrified by her students. Teacher Wang tried helping her out, but then again, the girls weren't going to allow that. So, they picked her up and dragged her sorry ass to class. After that class, Pan runs off to the toilet to get some rest. Still, Rong found her in the toilet and called her for another class. At this point, even the most miserable teacher, Teacher Pan, got tired and finally succumbed to their wishes. She allowed the students to get their physical arts teacher, and everyone rushed outside to start their lessons. After gathering all the students outside, Teacher Yi briefs them on the tests they're taking that day. He says he's testing their powers that day by doing a solid ball throwing test for body flexibility and core stamina. Chen goes first and fires himself up before throwing his ball 100 meters forward. According to the rules, anybody who throws over 80 meters gets a passing mark, and although Chen passes the test, the teacher is a little disappointed. Soon enough, it's Wang's turn and he picks the ball with his right hand and settles things with his spiritual helper dude so he doesn't end up destroying the field again. He aims the ball up and throws it into the air. Zhao, who was still in the air, received a call from one of his colleagues warning him about underestimating the faction he was about to enter. Around that time, the ball lands on the lawn at a whopping 50 meters. This disappoints the teacher who didn't know that Wang's ball actually went around the earth in a perfect circle and came back to land on the 50-meter mark on the lawn. During its flight, the ball hit Zhao in the head and took him out like a toothpick before landing on the mark. Soon after, the lesson ends, and by the end of the day, Teacher Wong and Teacher Yi meet up to discuss the results of the test they conducted. Teacher Yi expresses his disappointment at Wong for failing the test earlier, but then cuts his losses to continue searching for his heir. He also reminds Teacher Wong of the villain from the Four Emblem faction, who was coming over to take his revenge on their faction, and tells him not to worry at all, since he's been ready for such a thing for a long time now. Eventually, Teacher Yi agrees to stay with the school and continue testing the students so he can find his heir one day. The next morning, while Wang prepares himself for school, he stops and wrings out a slime mold right on his desk while his elf, Ling Fei, watches carefully. His mom's voice echoes from the kitchen downstairs, warning him not to be late for his morning class. Wang nods in agreement with his mother and listens to the morning news from his device. Apparently, Zhao was captured by the Songhai Immortal Art Tactical Team after he got hit in the head by Wang's ball. The team lead at the time, Zhou Yi, took all the credit and let the general public know that he hit him on the jaw, knowing clearly well that he was lying beautifully. Anyways, Wang finishes massaging his slime mold and activates it to showcase a beautiful bright golden color. Elsewhere, the three remaining members of the Four Emblem faction of crooks hold their usual daily meeting to discuss the state of affairs that morning. They pay their respects to their masters and settle down to discuss the absence of their beloved brother, Qing Jiao. They talk about the facts surrounding Qing Jiao's defeat and swear revenge against Wang's faction, the Faction 60, for capturing their brother and placing him in their spiritual jail. Shui Hu, the brash member of the three, promises to go in first and exact his revenge against Faction 60. Back at Wang's house, Froggy 2 wakes up and finds Wang dealing with something electrical on his desk. He wonders what the quiet dumbass may be up to right now, but then the spiritual helper dude pops out of Wang's body to explain exactly what Wang is doing at the moment, which is creating a demon amusement park with Froggy 2 as the theme. Spiritual helper dude takes his time to explain what is happening and ends up telling Froggy 2 that Wang built all he sees with his bare hands. In school, Teacher Wong explains the concept of the underground spiritual veins to the student and likens them to the spiritual vessels that carry spiritual energy from the Earth's core to the Earth's surface. He provides them with the varieties of spiritual veins that exist in the Earth's core and lets them know what happens once one of the veins is cut. He tells them about the incessant supernatural visions that occur whenever a vein is cut and tells them their spiritual impulses will lack once that happens. Chen asks the teacher if spiritual veins can be created artificially. Teacher Wong slams it right into his brain that it's physically impossible to create spiritual veins out of thin air. Wong, who's already created a spiritual root in his room before, checks outside to notice what was going on. Soon enough, Teacher Wang leaves, dismisses the class, and heads back to the staff room. The students notice what's happening outside their classroom and are shocked to realize that it is snowing in the middle of June. Something abnormal was happening, but they didn't seem to care at all. Instead, Shen advises them to get out there and play in the snow while they still can, and the others follow suit. Teacher Wong notices something weird, but chooses to ignore the obvious. As for Wong, he could see the thing happening in the middle of the playground. After confirming what he could, he gets up and walks off to take care of it. In the meantime, Teacher Wong gets outside to meet with Teacher Yi to ask him why he stopped Teacher Wong from stopping the Nimrod who caused the snow. Teacher Yi tells him to let the students handle everything so he can test them and figure out an heir from one of them. Also, if things get out of hand, he would step in and stop the perpetrator. Teacher Wong gets a little suspicious, but then he decides to leave things in Yi's hands to avoid causing trouble. On getting to the playground outside, Wong uses his spiritual eyes to check out the dome that was covering their school. His spiritual dude pops out again to tell him about the spiritual vein being destroyed right under their school. Wong urges his helper not to worry much about that at all, and that he'd handle things just fine. Just as he's about to unleash his power, the playful and stupid Chen throws a snowball at him, which Wang dodges. Soon, he creates more snowballs and throws them all at Wang, who dodges it all without any feeling in the world. Eventually, Wang gets very interested in the game when Sun Rong and the other red-headed girl come in to join him. He makes his snowballs and throws them at Chen and Guo. He then joins them all to make a snowman and enjoy his time with Sun Rong and the others for a while before getting back to his main business. They all have silent anime snowball fights that make even the Sword Saint jealous of the youth's vibrance. After playing around in the snow for a few more minutes, the cold from the artificial snow becomes so unbearable for all of them that even the fabric on their uniforms fails to warm their bodies up well. Ultimately, they call it quits and return inside to keep themselves warm. Inside the staff room, Pan notices her ink freezing up and discusses with Teacher Wang the sudden snowstorm outside the school to know what could be done about it. She gets curious and asks Teacher Wang about Teacher Yi's mission to find his heir. To her surprise, Teacher Wang tells her he thinks Teacher Yi is in the wrong faction and would do himself some good to go find his so-called heir in another faction. To be honest, if Teacher Yi wasn't so blind to seeing the power Wang wielded, then maybe he won't be having so much trouble trying to get someone to take over his art. They even make jokes about possible candidates and mention Wang being the possible candidate for the role, only to laugh it off as an impossible task. Little did those two airheads know that Wang would obliterate them if he wanted to, but he chose to keep quiet like a nerd and watch what was going on. Somewhere around school, Chen and the others all rush towards their classroom door. Chen places his hand on the lock to open the door, but it ends up getting frozen. The person behind the door urges him to keep quiet and avoid placing any body parts on the door so it doesn't become frozen meat. Chen warms his hands up with his spiritual impulse and moves on to break down the door, but Guo advises him against destroying public property. Sun Rong advises Chen to use the art of fireball to melt the cold layer on the frozen door, and Chen smiles at the idea. He removes his coat and recites a long-ass prayer just to create a little ball of fire on his index finger. After enduring being laughed at by his teammates, Chen runs away embarrassed and returns when Guo, Xiao Yu, the red-headed girl, and even Sun Rong get the same spell wrong. This must only mean something, and that's that the spiritual impulses around them are getting thinner. Sun Rong tries to gather spiritual impulses in her hands, but nothing seems to work out well. Surprised, she walks towards the window and realizes that the snowstorm must be weakening the spiritual impulse around them. Suddenly, Xiao Yu, whose weakness is cold, breaks down and gets immobile. Chen covers her with his coat and carries her up to get her to the infirmary so she can get the help that she needs. Somewhere around the school vicinity, Wei Hu sticks his goofy-looking sword into the ground and pours more power into it to increase the coldness in the atmosphere and cause fear in the students' hearts. While he's in his dastardly act, Wang waltzes in to stop his little charade. Shui Hu is initially stoked at Wang's indifference to the cold and wonders what he could be made not to fear the cold. Wang ignores him and removes Shui Hu's sword from the ground. This pisses off the brash Shui Hu, who tries to summon some kind of weird powers. However, Wang wasn't ready for his bullshit, so he throws him out of the magic dome he created so he can get enough time to return things to normal. Thankfully, his plan works, and soon enough, the school returns to the normal state it was before the harsh winter. Teacher Yi remained aloof over who erased the snowstorm from the entire school, as if it wasn't glaring enough. Anyways, Sui Hu manages to land at the police station to get himself captured by the credit thief, Zhou Yi, who claimed to have hit the man in the nuts to make him pass out quickly. Several days later, Shehu dies from his injuries, and everyone blames it on Zhou Yi, who is his alleged killer. Now the credit thief has become a wanted murderer, with a bounty of 233,333,303 spiritual coins on his head from the Four Emblem faction. In his office, Zhou's assistant reads the autopsy to him and mentions the cause of Zhou Hu's death, which is a slap to the head and broken bones from the fatal fall. Still, Zhou acts high and mighty as he tells his assistant to quit reporting too much bad news to him so he can think his way out of the shit he's put himself in. He calls the Four Emblems weak and confronts them to face him if they have the guts to do that. Knowing fully well that her boss was capping hard as he was visibly scared of the bounty, the assistant fuels his ego and walks out respectfully before she becomes his next subject matter. Seconds after she leaves, Zhou freaks out and wishes his master would come and save him. Meanwhile, Wong is seen trying to learn some sophisticated stuff from a scroll when his spiritual helper pops up to ask whether he's going to exchange whatever he was learning for some crispy noodles. Rather than do that, Wong takes out a coupon for a 30% special annual sale that was coming up that instant and rushes over to the Cultivation Mall to meet up with his other friends and buy whatever he could buy. Chen, Sun Rong, Xiao Yu, Guo, and Wang all graced the mall with their presence. While Chen and Guo were pretty psyched over the pretty little new things they were all seeing on display, Wang and the others just kept their cool as they admired the other things the mall had to offer. At one point, they waltz into the seafood section of the mall, and Guo tells them about his previous experience at his uncle's mantis shrimp farm, where he got to eat some pretty good shrimp dishes. Chen chastises him for eating meat without his consent, but then they all move on to check out the ridiculously expensive artifacts for sale. Rong tells them a few facts about the artifacts, including the fact that most of the artifacts can't be bought with just money. Apparently, the artifacts would need to specifically select a master for themselves before they can be sold off to that exact person. As the other people discussed and chatted with each other, Wang Ling got very stressed as every artifact present there was calling to Ling to buy them. Wang painstakingly walked through the entire corridor of artifacts, enduring the cries from all the artifacts there begging him to buy them. Wang ignores them and moves on to the next section to continue browsing for crispy noodles to buy at a discount. Soon after he's gone, all the artifacts in the show glass wither and become sadder than they originally were. The manager of the entire supermarket, who was watching the entire mall from his control room, noticed Wong and his other friends from Faction 60 walking around the mall. He instructs his server to tell every salesman in the mall to encourage Wang and his friends to buy more items from their market and make them pay with their spiritual force. Also, he tells them to make sure that the salesman overcharges the price of every good in the market so they can extract as much money from them as possible. His server tries countering his plan, but then again, the boss isn't ready to hear anything from him. Besides, he would be gathering some attention for himself to be recognized by the 4 emblem members, who seem to have a bounty on Zhou's head. The supermarket boss wanted to bully juniors from Zhou's faction so he could rile him up a little bit and encourage his backers to hang him out to dry. It's a race of time and who has the better wits. Wong buys some random items from the shop and pays for them in a jiffy. As for Chen, he gets captivated by some void glasses with a game on them and tries them on. The salesman realizes he's one of the people on his boss's list, so he goes in to entice him with ridiculous offers. Guo joins him a little while later and they both fawn over the beautiful instrument together. When the time came to pay, the salesman offered them the void glasses for an overpriced 60,000 spiritual coins. To make things easier for them, he advised them to take their discount offer and take the void glasses for free, just in case they didn't have the money that instant. However, the supermarket reserves the right to deduct spiritual coins from the students' salaries over 3 months until their debts get repaid in full. Chen and Guo seriously consider the offer and the salesman notices this. He then goes on to bring another item to the table, the latest blind box of spiritual beast eggs, which offers them a rare chance to get a rare beast upon hatching. If they were to get such an egg, then they would have to pay 100,000 spiritual coins just to get the egg. Both dummies were about to sign the agreement on impulse, but thankfully, Rong and the other were there to stop them from making the worst mistakes of their lives. Rong opts to pay for their shit with her golden card, but then again, the salesman wasn't going to let some rich girl take his job from him. He gives some bullcrap explanation about sales and the price of stuff, forcing Wong to step in and do something about it. He shows the salesman the coupon about the discount, and the salesman introduces him to a random bargaining event where he gets to spin a raffle draw to win. If Wong manages to spin a golden ball out of the 30,000 silver balls on his first try, he gets all the items his friend ordered for free. However, if he spins a silver ball, then he wins a soft roll paper. Wong's pretty fine with this wager, so he goes all in, knowing fully well that he's already manipulated his luck parameters with his elf, Ling Fei. Wong somehow wins 8 chances at pulling the lottery, and he tells the salesman to make his prize the void glasses and the beast egg. The salesman got too full of himself and left things to Wang, who pulled a golden ball on his first try. Shocked by the reality of this happening, the salesman pulls a dirty trick and tells him to spin a golden ball again. Wong sighs as if he was seeing this coming and does the same thing to spin the golden ball a second time. The salesman increases the spin count to 3, then 4, for a chance to win more coupons in the shop. Wong takes up all his chances and ends up pulling the gold ball every damn time. When the time came for him to pull 2 ruby cards, Wong did it pretty well. Wong moves on to continue winning raffle draws and lotteries to land himself and his friends premium items in the supermarket all for free. After getting hit in the face, the supermarket boss quits his half-assed plan and makes sure nobody gives Wang a chance to win a free coupon ever again. Wong still walks up to the crispy ramen store to get a sachet for himself. Upon opening his first one, he noticed the buy one get one free coupon in the packet and kept on getting the same coupon on every packet of ramen till he bought everything on the rack entirely for free. The salesman quits his job and the supermarket boss loses a shit ton of money, hatching one of his devious plans in broad daylight. Wong and his friends board a train to get back to their faction. On their way home, they all feel bad for winning their items for free and decide to give back to society by donating all their stuff to charity. Everyone agrees on this, so they get down to planning things out. As for Zhu, he receives some shiny new clothes from his secret admirer with some instructions on how to put them all on. In the next scene, several dozen elves are seen taking care of the library to the Way of Heaven, watching and supervising those who try to climb the ladder of mind to learn the 3,000 secrets of the Way to Heaven. It's said that whoever can understand the secret arts is going to be invincible for all his life. To prevent the wrong person from getting their hands on the arts, the elves have to make sure the right person climbs the ladder of mind. During one of their shifts, the elves receive new members to their team, and those two are none other than Jue and Jiao of the Four Emblem faction. Now, these two goofballs are notorious and useless when they were still alive, so, to give them a medable punishment, their tongue-loose leader tells the others to throw them into the lunar well so they can think of their actions. As for Zhang Luying, the other leader asks if he's out of the well already, but then again, bro is only working in vain. Apparently, the red-colored elf leader thought Zhang was a good person, judging by how consistent he is in learning the secret arts. But when his partner tells him Zhang's true nature, he forbids him from ever getting to the top of the lunar well. Suddenly, two elves get to the entrance of the lunar well to check out where Zhang has gotten to. After looking into the vast world of the lunar well, they find Zhang a few hundred steps away from getting to the entrance of the lunar well after climbing thousands of steps to get there already. If Zhang's able to get to the library of the Way of Heaven, there's no telling what he might do to the elves living there. While they worry about Jiang, two other elves check out the Ladder of Mind from the entrance of the library and find another person, Chen, climbing the stairs to get to the library of the Way of Heaven. He sweats profusely both in the spirit realm and in real life, where he meditates as he takes his last steps to glory to get to the entrance to the library. Sadly for the cocky bastard, two elves were already waiting for his sorry ass to get too close to the top so they could yeet his ass back down to square one, and that was his 6,751st try to get to the top of the well. The red-colored leader asks his subordinates why they didn't let him get to the top yet, and they all tell him that Chen has been downright disrespectful towards his master, so they're doing the world a lot of good by keeping him there. The red-colored dude concurs with his boys and orders them to push the offender back down to square one. Chen wakes up in real life, smirks menacingly, and curses at his brother as motivation to continue trying to get to the library of the Way of Heaven. In the meantime, the final leader of the Four Emblem factions throws a fit in their meeting spot when he realizes just how many of his bad guys have been caught and either imprisoned or killed. The second person remaining in the faction asks his master to inform his master about Faction 60 so he can take care of them himself. However, the cockiness of the bald dude doesn't let him admit defeat. He promises to deal with Faction 60 himself before their master returns from his retreat, seeing as they're in the pre-immortal phase. Besides, their master has a lost disciple named Zero, who's stronger than them, and even though there's no telling where Zero's at the moment, they can't afford to let him take all the glory after he takes down Faction 60. Happy to hear his master's words, the second person tells him to encourage his master to try attacking the Faction 60 people in their little charity sale that's to be held the following day. Apparently, the red-headed dude was fond of his divine red flames. Anyways, the Elviz taking care of the library continue discussing after sending Chen back to the bottom of the food chain. One of them, who was an intern in the spiritual heavens, asks stupid questions about the library's tradition and gets smacked in the head for it. Back on Earth, Teacher Pan gets another to make the students' lives miserable. This time, she challenges the students to make as much money as they can from the charity sale, which is happening the following day. The highest paid person gets to receive a special wish from the leader of their faction. Up next, Chen continues his 6,753rd try to get to the library of the Way of Heaven after chowing down a cherry fruit. In the meantime, Wong takes Froggy 2 to the abandoned room in his house and takes him to a secret door which he opens. The door gives a bright yellow glow, and Froggy 2 follows Wong inside a portal to get to the Way of Heaven library. Thinking Wong was just a cocky fool, Froggy 2 follows Wong with pride, knowing full well that almost nobody from the library would recognize him. Just then, Froggy 2 uses his last two brain cells to connect the dots as to why Wong would have such easy access to the Way of Heaven library. At that instant, Wong takes out a pack of instant noodle crisps and hands it over to the elves as a welcome gift. Suddenly, the 7 leaders of every section of the library fly down to pay their respects, leaving Froggy 2 with a shocked face and broken heart. He immediately succumbs to real power and apologizes for underestimating Wong all along. Wong's spirit helper dude pops out and explains what's about to happen, which is an exchange of powers and materials between Wong, who had a packet of crispy noodles, and the elves, who had different shit to give Wang, their master. The exchange goes on, and Wong is presented with a special grub, which he rejects, and a special soap, which he also rejects. Chen, who was already halfway up the ladder of mind, gets thrown back to square one again. Froggy 2 advises Wong to get something for his parents, but Wong gives a bunch of reasons why he can't do that. In the end, he asks for another item that he might like, and the red leader finds a bunch of other things, which the annoying idiot, Wong, didn't like. Well, too bad for Wong now, as he kept the elves busy enough for Chen to learn the way of heaven, undetected. After pulling out so many instruments and choosing nothing, Froggy 2 gets pissed and asks the elves why the Wong loves crispy noodles that much. The red one begins a long-ass story of how Wang Ling's boring and lonely childhood led him to like noodle crisps. As a youngster, Wong had a natural affinity for spiritual power, and this made him very special. When he was much younger, the red leader infiltrated his house and made a deal with little Wong to put him on the Way of Heaven whitelist, all in exchange for a pack of crispy ramen. Wong ate his first pack of crispy ramen that time, and got to love it ever since. Just then, a rice cooker with a seal on it pops out of the well, and Wong falls in love with it. He picks up the sealing instrument and walks back to his place on Earth. At the same time, Chen finishes learning the Way of Heaven, and gets himself back to the real world to continue his sinister plans to take over his brother. Later that night, the second dude from the faction of the Four Emblems finally makes his way to the Faction 60's quarters to get shit done. He activates his glowing red flames and looks at the space menacingly. At that instant, Senior Huang from Faction 60 finally finds the lair of the Four Emblems. He phones it into the authorities as he walks towards their altar, flying to the top to investigate it. On getting there, he checks out the ashes left on the table and realizes that they were ashes from Zhu Zhen, the second red-headed person's red flames. He warns his people to be very careful of what might happen so they don't get caught off guard. Moving on, he pauses to remind himself about something he would have liked to tell his people. However, he chooses not to tell anybody, that thing for his safety and theirs. He sends the authorities the location of the Four Emblems and finishes his work for the day, reassuring himself that it's best if he doesn't worry about unnecessary things. The following day in school, Wang's elite class is filled with people talking and discussing about the charity sale that's happening soon. Guo tells his peers a thing or two about their faction head Chen, who's also known to have taught Zhou all he knows today. Soon, the conversation drifts from gossip about the prize to checking out what they all brought to the charity sale that was happening that day. The boisterous Chen first summons his father's special Guandao broadsword. Guo's flabbergasted to see Chen doing such a dastardly thing, and he calls him out on such BS. However, Chen reassures him, telling him not to worry too much about what his dad thinks, as they're known to make new broadswords every year. Xiaoyu goes next and takes out the little cute figurines she made mimicking her friends' appearances. Sun Rong appreciates the thought behind everything as Xiaoyu hands over each figurine to her friends. Out of sheer happiness, Xiaoyu asks Wang to tell them what he brought for the charity sale. As usual, the pompous Wang remains silent and stares at them with his red eyes like he meant to eat them up. Xiaoyu and Sun Rong get the memo and try to imagine what Wang could have brought to the charity sale. Boy oh boy was it bad. They clear their imaginations immediately and cower in fear of Wang's authority. Guo tries to figure out what they are thinking about, but they advise him against asking too many questions. Just then, Wang nonchalantly brings out the weird rice cooker sealing pot he got from the elves the previous day and prepares to get to the charity sale. In a few hours, everyone gathered outside on the playground and set up tents to mark their stalls for the sale. The environment is a little vibrant for a while, with Sun Rong and her friends walking the walk like average people. Chen opens his stall for business, and Guo receives his order from a robot, which is a weird gourd that he called a magic ware. Wang gets a little curious and asks Guo for some demonstration. Guo puts an annoying fat boy smirk on his face and smashes the gourd into the ground to reveal the beautiful kittens he'd bought the previous day. Chen picks up one of them and handles it roughly. The kitten gets so pissed that he scratches a part of his face and runs away. Chen becomes so bitter as he rushes after the kitten to catch up to it. While all that happens, Zhu manages to sneak into the school premises dressed as a student. Thinking he was out of the woods, the fat redhead walks and turns his head around like a lizard, searching for anybody who could have seen him. Despite being very careful, Zhu still couldn't spot the incredibly sneaky Teacher Pan, who called him back to complain about his hairstyle. Zhu freezes in place as his mind thinks a whopping 5,000 thoughts per second. Eventually, Teacher Pan meets out her verdict and decides to record his name for further punishment. Zhu does a half bow to beg for some mercy as he sweats profusely like a child who just shat his pants. Fortunately for him, and unfortunately for Faction 60, Teacher Pan let him go with a threat to deal with him if he doesn't dye his hair black and get an appropriate haircut the next day. Big mistake, man. After she's gone, Zhu gets very shocked and embarrassed to still be afraid of instructors despite being way above her in rank. The resulting anger causes him to get atop a high building to begin the ritual to take down Faction 60. In the meantime, Wang notices the change in the atmosphere and sees the fierce flame of divine spiritual energy. After using his second eye to look at it, he sees the incoming flames and quickly reverts the spell to turn them into fireworks. Chen, who was super confused at the time, urges Wang to speak out and advertise his special rice cooker if he wants to get any sales. The others gather around that time to tell Sun Rong just how bad things get whenever Wong opens his mouth to speak for too long. Guo asks Rong for her magic wares, and she shows them all her special launch buttons for a something-something group that's super special. Imagine getting your hands on that. Right after they end their conversation, Zhu notices what happened to his divine flames. He amplifies his powers and throws another attack. Still, Wong stops it from happening. This pisses him off more and he moves on to plan B, which involves taking his Flame Force Divine Sword energy and transforming him into a rice cooker before sending it to the charity sale so it can look like an item for sale with nobody knowing that it's a full-on rice cooker. Zhu even dreams about the rice cooker going on and praises himself for thinking of such a genius way to take out his enemies. What his dumb brain didn't know was that Wang was steps ahead of it. Firstly, he teleports the dangerous rice cooker into the gym. Then, he takes himself and Zhou the police officer, there to show him what to do after sealing the dangerous rice cooker in his rice cooker. Zhou gets to watch Wang display incredible power as he seals the rice cooker and takes it away. Before leaving, he takes Zhou to the roof where Zhu was and lets him deal with the perpetrator. Both parties, known to be airheads, make bold claims about taking down the other. When it comes down to it, Zhu sends his divine flames toward Zhou with an ow and rips off all his clothes, exposing his golden underwear that's impervious to any type of magic attack. Zhu makes several desperate attempts to take Zhou down, but in the end, Zhou beats him like a fragile matchstick. The next day in class, Head Chen presents gifts to the only person who sold up to 1 million in spiritual coins. After getting a round of applause, he calls Chen to get to the class podium to ask for anything he wants to be done. Apparently, Wang tells him he only wants a pack of crispy raccoon noodles. The entire class goes numb with surprise. Out of all the things Wang could ask for, he chose to ask for a pack of raccoon noodles. Absurd. That night, Zhongwu, the last remaining member of the Four Emblem faction, takes his special lamp thingy with Zhao's soul and goes to the streets to find any item called the Spiritual Lotus that can help him recreate Zhao's body. Zhao's soul thanks him for the help he's rendering to him at the moment, and Xiong walks up to a secret trap door where he finds his master's old friend. He knocks the door furiously and waits for the old ugly man behind to open it. Upon seeing Xiong, the old man gives him a round thing wrapped in some kind of cloth. Xiong opens the cloth and realizes that it is the spiritual lotus he's been searching for all along. Xiong is delighted to see the man and walks away to avoid being caught. Soon after, Wang shows up to check up on the same man. On seeing Wang, the old man rushes into his little room and returns with a pack of crispy noodles to pacify him. The following day in the police force, Zhou Yi gets into a meeting with his superior to talk to him about the capture of the criminals earlier. This time, he gives Senior Huang some credit and lets his boss know that he also had a hand in the criminals' capture. The boss jokes about Senior Huang phoning in and reporting Zhou's bravado to him. Zhou gives a nervous laugh and moves on to the next thing in his meeting. He takes out an envelope containing information about the next plan of the Four Emblem factions, according to an anonymous tip he got from some closet dude. The boss takes a look at the information and finds out that Xiong Wu, one of the most powerful dudes from the immortal stages of the Four Emblem faction, has gotten the location of the legendary Nuwa secret realm. Not only that, but it's also known that he now has access to the semi-finished pottery figurines and may use them as weapons for his political reasons in no time. The boss ranks the case as a red alert and arranges a briefing with every senior warrior. In a few hours, Teacher Wang, Teacher Pan, and Teacher Yi all gather in the staff room to talk about Xiong's dangerous plans. While Teacher Pan was pretty scared of what might happen, Yi calms sorry ass down and promises to stop Xiong from wreaking havoc on the children if he happens to come around the school. To show how serious he is on the entire matter, Teacher Yi uses a huge amount of his spiritual impulse to transform his body to look like his younger self. Everyone in the room is shell-shocked when they see Teacher Yi's seriousness and immediately believe in his ability to turn the tides of battle in their favor. The last unidentified teacher there gets up and decides to include the students in the oncoming battle. If they're going to stand a chance against someone like Xiong, then they have to make sure everyone's in sync. Shortly after the meeting, Teacher Pan calls the students in the elite class for a meeting to discuss the oncoming war. She shows them the bands from the Four Emblem faction, challenging them to a war, and this makes the students quite confused over the entire matter. What's a challenge order or band, and what do the colors mean? Well, Guo steps up and explains the meaning of each band color to their dumb brains, so they don't end up underestimating the enemy and killing themselves. As the class goes on, Wang gets reminded by his spirit Dudi that the Four Emblem faction seems to think highly of them. Wang tells him not to worry too much about things, and that he'll take care of everyone. At that point, Teacher Pan gets teary-eyed and causes the other children to cry over the war. When she's done crying, she puts her glasses back on and tells the children to write a 3,000-word essay on the weird speech she just gave. Now that's a terrible teacher for one. In the next scene, Xiongwu is seen standing in the middle of the legendary secret location. He raises his thin hands and summons all the pottery figurines from the sandy desert. Then, he puts some kind of fabric on one of the pottery figures and controls it to shoot some beam into the desert. Almost immediately, the people from the Faction Protection Agency notice the calamity that's about to befall Faction 60. They phone in Zhou, their boss, who tells them to do all they can to stop Xiongwu from achieving his aim to take down Faction 60. At the same time, other faction leaders are called upon for help, and each of them offers to help Faction 60 in one way or the other. Members from the Zhao faction, the Knowledge faction, the Association of Cultivators, and the Kiyomiya family all opt in to help their comrade faction, Faction 60, to defeat Xiongwu. By nighttime, Teacher Wang gathers all the students and teachers outside the playground and briefs them on the little thing they should do to ensure their collective defense is strong and impregnable. When it's time, everyone, including Wong, shoots their spiritual force into the sky to create a huge protection dome covering the entire school. Wong leaves the crowd shortly to get a better view of the enemy. Around that time, Xiongwu and his pottery figurines show up to deal some considerable damage to the dome. Amid the war, Froggy 2 and his band of merry weirdos show up from the darkness and end up scaring the shit out of Xiaoyu and Sun Rong, who were just trying their best to keep up with everyone. Apparently, Froggy 2 thought everything out and decided to help the faction that's been housing his sorry ass all along. He thanks Sun Rong and her partner for giving him the chance to get this done. Following that, he and his fellow dogs reinforce the defense dome. Xiang notices the buff in power and decides to try a different tactic. This time, he sends his pottery thingies towards the dome to bomb the surface. Soon, Teacher Yi shows up and presents himself to Xiongwu. Xiang recognizes Teacher Yi as his uncle and warns him not to interfere in his revenge. Unable to do a single thing, Teacher Yi almost shat his pants as he smiled for a possible miracle. Just then, Wang sees his chance and he uses the Great Disarmament spell from the Way of Heaven formula to obliterate Xiongwu and his pottery figurines. Xiongwu ends up losing his sense of balance and falling headfirst towards the ground, which breaks his neck. Teacher Wang shows up at that instant and praises Teacher Yi for taking care of the disgruntled fellow. However, Teacher Yi knows that he would be a stark liar if he took all the credit for what happened to his nephew, Xiongwu. A few hours after the incident, Zhou coordinates his team of investigators to figure out the location of the Den of the Four Emblems. Zhou's assistant heads the operation and sees to it that the entire den is sealed and made inaccessible to just anyone but the Immortal Phase Corps, which is the organization they all work for. After doing the needful, Zhou's assistant phones her boss to give him the news. Once he's done hearing the good news, Zhou's assistant encourages him to take a breather from work, seeing as all 4 members of the Four Emblem faction have been arrested. Zhou, however, still suspects that something's not quite right at all. He keeps quiet and waits for anything to happen. Suddenly, he gets his wish, and his assistant gets to eat her words when the cave explodes and kills her. Deep inside the cave, Wang Ling, who's been hiding under the round table the entire time, forces himself out of hibernation, ready to test out his new power on the faction that took his 4 brothers. Elsewhere, Sun Rong is seen checking out Wang's gift for her back when she was sick. She smiles softly as her eyes caress every detail of the crispy noodle pack and wishes she could understand what made it so special to Wang. Like a little teenager in love, she fondly remembers the moment Wang handed her the packet of noodles and realizes that the collector's packet is one that Wang loves the most. The following day at the Cultivation Reserve Bank, a random man walks up to the cashier to withdraw his spiritual coins, but is shocked to find out that his funds, alongside several others, have been sublimated due to the effects of the demon war. Rather than cause a scene or sue the bank, the poor man fades into nothingness when he thinks of how he's going to pay child support for the month. To make matters worse, the cashier felt no ounce of sympathy for the dude. Shortly after the ordeal with Bro, Sun Rong shows up at the bank with her plethora of bodyguards to check out the bank's reserve vault. The general manager of the bank, accompanied by the cashier from earlier, boldly shows Rong and her bodyguards the huge metal door leading inside the bank's vault. Before opening it, he explains the mechanism with which the door works, so Rong can know that the items in there are safe from being stolen. Sun Rong keeps quiet throughout the entire trip and listens to the manager yap on and on about the tightest security on the 49th floor and all that. Seriously, guys, the manager yaps much more efficiently than that talkative friend everyone always seems to have. Before I digress, the manager shows Rong around the most secretive part of the bank and advertises the entire vault to her. In the end, Rong finds out point blank that her item is safe there with them. When it's time to present the item she wishes to keep, Rong presents a small box and opens it to reveal a shiny pack of Raccoon Crispy Noodle Ramen, Collector's Edition. Seconds later, Rong's grandpa shows up with a worried, cheerful look on his face. After greeting his daughter, Mr. Sun turns to the manager and asks if he can deposit his granddaughter, Sun Rong, with them as insurance for 3 days. Confused, the GM allows Mr. Sun to keep talking. He backs him and asks if he can keep Sun Rong in the furnace inside the vault for 3 days, where nobody would be allowed to touch her. After the deal has been made, Mr. Sun appears on the news to tell the general public about the death threat that the 5th member of the Four Emblem faction, Wang Ling, sent to him about his daughter. According to the threat, Wang Ling promises to abduct and possibly kill Sun Rong in the next 3 days. Upon hearing this news, Wang breaks his chopsticks in anger and prepares himself to rescue his admirer. Moving on, the news people talk about the villain of the story, Huang Long of the Four Emblem faction. It's said that Huang Long hid under the conference table of the den, where the spiritual veins are the richest, and grew in size and strength by continuously absorbing the spiritual veins of the earth. After considering the facts on the ground, they all conclude that Sun Rong truly is in danger. One of the reporters there gets a little too zesty and throws a weird performance encouraging Sun Rong to fight for her family's honor. 3 hours before the stealing time, all of Sun Rong's friends show up at Mr. Sun's house to check up on Grandpa. They all give their opinions on his decision to hide his daughter in the furnace to protect her from the terrible villain. Wang keeps quiet and says nothing as he waits for Xiaoyu to speak up. When she does, she asks Mr. Sun if they can meet up with Sun Rong Anytime soon. To their dismay, Mr. Sun tells them that he can't possibly allow them to check up on her, as he needs her to be isolated the entire time. However, he does give them another option to check on her, which is via a conference call. Suddenly, one of the bodyguards pulled a giant screen up front and connected to the pilled furnace via conference call. There, Guo and Chen are taken aback when they notice just how similar the entire space is to her room. Sun Rong smiles and explains everything her grandpa did to make sure she was being taken care of during her stay there, and the two dummies are amazed. Xiaoyu talks about the elephant in the room and tells her friend not to worry too much about the villain, as she doesn't believe he's man enough to abduct her that midnight. With reporters and onlookers standing outside and waiting for an update from the team, there's very little prediction over what might happen. The Reserve Bank currently has the highest security up ever, and Huang Long isn't a feeble enemy either. With only 18 minutes left till the clock hits midnight, Joe and his people all check the perimeter for any movements or teleportations. Thankfully, everything's in place, and they lie in wait for the intruder. Meanwhile, Wang and Froggy 2 take a walk around Sun Rong's mansion, hoping to get a thing or two their way before it's too late. Froggy 2 stumbles upon Sun Rong's room and smashes the door open to check out the space therein. Wang follows suit to check out Sun's room in all its splendor. He finds a picture of his younger self and Sun Rong playing and picks it up to take a look at it. Soon, it's midnight, and the bell gongs. In a split second, all the electricity in the entire bank goes out and Huang makes his move. He uses the power disruption to teleport Rong into his own space, one that he carved out using his sheer will. Surprised, Rong asked Huang why he was so hell-bent on taking her out. Huang reminds her of the nickname Agan, pointing out that that was what started it all in the first place. Now, she's going to pay dearly for everything, taking his disciples from him and making him leave his retreat to avenge his brothers. To top it all off, Huang confesses to being the creator of the furnace and, with a menacing laugh on his face, orders Sun Rong to fear him. Rong remains still as Huang encloses them in a barrier so his attack can be much more effective. Just as Sun Rong is about to give up on everything, Wang's apparition shows up out of nowhere and explains the situation to her. From the looks of things, Wang can't force his way into the space to avoid destroying everything in it, including Sun Rong. However, he does give Sun Rong an option to become his embodiment by eating a ramen crisp from the raccoon packet. Sun Rong obeys him and eats a noodle crisp. Wang initially makes fun of her, but eventually eats his words, when Sun Rong transforms into the very embodiment of the immortal king himself, Wang Ling. Even Sun Rong is a little surprised by how much power she gained just by eating a ramen crisp from some special packet. Her outfit changes, and she gets engulfed in an enormous amount of spiritual impulses. Not only that, one of her eyeballs turns red like Wang's. Wang summons her back to the limbo his consciousness resides in to tell her a thing or two about using his power. Before getting to that, Sun Rong checks to confirm if she was using up to 10% of Wang Ling's power. To her surprise, however, she finds out that she's been using only 1/10 of a billion of his overall power. At this point, Sun Rong's body freezes in place and shatters like a year-old glass. Nonetheless, Sun Rong brings herself back to normal and allows Wang to take control over her entire body so she doesn't end up killing herself. Wang notices her taking a battle stance and throws one of his swords at her to stop her from getting too overpowered. Sun Rong effortlessly breaks the sword with her gentle palm stance, leaving Huang in a state of surprise. A few moments after the power outage, the backup generators start up and power is restored to the bank in a jiffy. To avoid chaos from spreading, Wong has Froggy 2 transform into Sun Rong to keep the others glued to the screen and unsuspicious of anything while he does the Lord's work in taking down these bad dudes. Chen notices the weirdness in Sun's body language and calls everyone's attention to it. Xiao Yu, who knows about the entire plan, tries to change the topic. Up next, Zhou receives a call from his boss congratulating him for taking down Huang in advance. Zhou explains his plight to him, telling him that he didn't have anything to do about Huang's capture. However, his boss was too happy to even listen to reason and he hung up the phone in a few. Just then, Senior Jing, aka Wang's spirit helper Duda, pops out of Zhu's iPad to brief him on the progress of the mission. After receiving the greetings, Jing tells Zhou about the entire fight that's happening that instant, not forgetting to mention how Froggy 2 was standing in as Sun Rong at the furnace. Ling synchronizes the battle details on Zhou's iPad and tells him to get his team ready in 3 minutes to infiltrate Huang's location on demand. As for Froggy 2, he pops out in his spirit form and tells Wong that his physical appearance manipulator is bound to expire very soon. Wong ties a string behind Froggy 2's tail and shocks it with some pink aura to keep the disguise on. In the meantime, Sun continues letting Wong take over her entire body as she manipulates all of Huang's attacks by sheer will. Though surprised by her sudden strength, Huang still refuses to give up on trying to take Sun down. He threatens to end her very existence at that place, but then again, Sun Rong isn't ready to die in the hands of some ugly muchacho. The two have a go at each other, and Huang ends up getting the short end of the stick. Not only does he lose his arm bones, but he also crashes into a wall and gets ghastly wounded. While that happens, Teacher Yi, the Sword Saint, is seen meditating as he searches the atmosphere for clues on his new successor. Apparently, Huang Long was the favorite pupil of his brother, and would have been in a much better place if he wasn't such an asshole about things. What a disgrace. Soon after, the fourth teacher of the high school shows up to tell Teacher Yi some details about the wordless book and its journey in the hands of the different factions. Teacher Yi takes out one of his wordless books, the small wordless book, and opens hoping to spectate the fight of one of the people he's fought before in his lifetime. Surprisingly, the wordless book showcases Huang Long fighting an invisible person. And since Teacher Yi hasn't fought that person before, there was no telling who it was. The other teacher tries suggesting if the person was in their faction or not, but Yi tells him that the same person used the art of splitting the heaven door to destroy Xiang Wu back then. The teacher laughs out loud and asks the master how Faction 60 would be intact if an ordinary person from there made such a bold spell and kept it all hidden. Teacher Yi ignores his snide remarks and reignites his determination to find the mystery person who's been playing with his intelligence all along. With that, he creates an interface connector to broadcast the fight he's witnessing from his wordless book live on the screens of the streets of Faction 60 to find a comment that might expose who the other invisible person in his book is. Almost immediately, the reporters describe the weird stick figure on the screen and liken it to Huang Long. In just a few seconds, the entire feed is taken to the internet, where everyone streams it live. Amidst it all, Chen and Guo get very suspicious as they search around for Wang. It all suddenly clicks in their heads when they realize that Wang is usually absent during pivotal moments such as this one. Where was he this time? Xiao Yu sheepishly tells them that Wang is probably out walking the dog, so he should be back soon. As expected, the two bird brains believe every ounce of what Xiao Yu said. I mean, who walks his dog during a literal apocalypse? Mr. Sun is a better listener than the two high schoolers, and he gets the memo that Wang may be the one saving his daughter all along. Around that time, Teacher Wang and Lord Thunder discuss the powerful cultivator behind everything. Teacher Wang suspects he is hiding something, and advises Lord Thunder to tell him his secret. However, Lord Thunder laughs sheepishly and avoids the question while he thinks about a scene he observed earlier. That day, he had followed Zhou to meet his master, only to find out that Zhou's backer was a child. There was a gourd that was sealed by an ancient spell that was broken by Wang Ling. Lord Thunder suddenly considers Wang as the only person saving Faction 60 all along. Teacher Wang also notices the change of expression on his face and asks Lord Thunder to tell him what he thinks. However, Lord Thunder ignores the question again and urges Teacher Wang to check out Huang, as he just got up to deal the final blow. He yaps a few more bad words about Sun losing herself in the process of killing and levitates to the air after gathering as much power as he can. He fights some taijutsu with Sun, who blocks and counters his every move until he loses his advantage in the battle. Even so, Huang still created a huge fireball to take Sun down. However, even that wasn't enough to bring her down. As a last resort, he unleashes his inner beast and transforms himself into an inhuman beast. Sun relays this information to Wang, who tells her to keep calm and remember what she was taught. Sun takes a deep breath engulfs herself in spiritual impulse, and moves in for a series of rushed attacks that weaken poor Wong and remove some of his teeth. Teacher Yi hears the rumble in his other realm and rushes over to the gym to figure out who his mystery person is. On getting there, Huang finds himself bashed up and unable to move on the pavement he was thrown to. Zhou's people arrest him and take him to prison. In the meantime, Wang brings Sun to the balcony of a very high building and gives a pack of crispy instant noodles as a reward for maintaining world peace. Sun Rong accepts the gift in good faith and complains a little over how hard saving the world is. Eventually, she eats the noodle and gets her silent moment with Wang. Sadly, the old man Teacher Yi spoils the fun by barging in on their conversation. Wang disappears immediately. He sees Teacher Yi and leaves Sun Rong to talk to him. Teacher Yi faces Sun Rong and names her the heir. He's been searching for all this while. Sun Rong is a little shocked at this and she asks him how he found out she's the one. Teacher Yi tells her that she has the same aura that he sensed in the gymnasium earlier, so she must be the one he's looking for. At this point, Sun Rong can't even argue anymore. Rather, she asks if she would be forced to be his disciple, but to her surprise, Teacher Yi bows down to her and begs her to be the new leader of the sword faction. Sun Rong is flabbergasted. After learning the way of heaven, Chen Nanchuan, the second disciple of the master teacher Yi served, finally makes his way out of the little hole he kept himself in and takes down every Immortal Corps member present in their lair. Then, he finds Zhou's assistant gasping for air shortly after the explosion and remembers his 4 disciples who were now absent. From the looks of things, Chen Nanchuan never knew what happened in the outside world during his retreat, so there was a lot he didn't know. Of course, Zhou's assistant would die before she betrays the team. Chen Nanchuan still doesn't care about her BS, as he raises her into the air and uses some mind control voodoo to turn her against her precious mobile team so she can tell him all she knows. Back at Wong's high school, their gym teacher arranges a judo spar session between Chen, Wong, Guo, Xiaoyu, Froggy 2, who filled in for Sun Rong that was absent at the time, and another guy. After Guo takes down the guy, Chen and Wong go next. Froggy 2 is also paired with Xiaoyu, and he tricks her with an illusion art to make her believe he is easy to take down. Sadly, he wasn't, and he beat Xiaoyu in the spar by a mile. As for Chen and Wong's fight, Chen goes in first and tries to bring down the slim and heavy Wang. To his surprise, however, the seemingly frail Wong isn't that easy to take down. Wong gets the memo and allows himself to get taken down to avoid getting any suspicion drawn towards him. After the sparring session, Guo tells everyone about the text he received from Zhou during his leisure time, munching down snacks or something. Apparently, Zhou wanted them all to come to a place he called the Immersive Theater to watch a super realistic drama between sword immortal demons. He says it's good for their cultivation skill if they can see an actual demon battle play out in front of them. Although not everyone's psyched by this thought, they still anticipated the movie. Up next, Mr. Sun receives an August visitor, Teacher Yi, aka the Sword Saint, who was there to ask for his permission to take Sun Rong in as the new leader of the Infinite Sword faction. Mr. Sun served him 1,000-year-old peaches to ease his nerves, but then again, Teacher Yi wasn't there to eat anything. Rather, he got straight to the point and asked Mr. Sun for his opinion. Mr. Sun laughs a little bit and appreciates the thought, but then again, he rejects Teacher Yi's offer, and for good reason. How on earth would a cultivator in the foundation phase defeat a cultivator in the true immortal phase? It's just impossible, to say the least. Sun Rong, who never wanted to go to any mountain, backs her grandpa up, and this makes him much more solid in his decision. He gets up from his chair and asks Teacher Yi for his true intentions for asking Sun Rong to become their leader, despite his dangerous younger brother, Chen Nanchuan, doing the most to get in there by force. He reiterates his point and lets Teacher Yi know that he won't be letting his only daughter get in any danger. Teacher Yi takes the L for now and promises to return with infallible proof that Sun Rong is a genius. Now, if that isn't dumb, then tell me what is. Anyways, he takes his leave and Sun Rong escorts him out. Just outside the door, Sun Rong gives him a ticket to the immersive theater Zhou invited all of them to that weekend. Moments after he leaves, both Sun Rong and Zhou report their progress to Wong via the messaging app on their phone. The following day, Wong's parents leave their house for a hospital checkup. Apparently, Wong's mom was feeling the heebie-jeebies and they needed to find out what was wrong. After saying their goodbyes, both parents leave and Wong gets back to finishing the welding job on a weird-looking chipset. When he's done, he picks Froggy 2 up and places the chipset on a wall in his room. Almost immediately, the entire wall starts glowing with a bright yellow hue that keeps Wong waiting for a little while. Froggy 2, who was confused, asked for some clarification, and Ling showed up to give him a crash course over Wong's intentions. Apparently, our boy Wong created a new planet just for his dog. Isn't that sweet? While that happens, Zhou meets up with the others, Chen, Xiaoyu, Sun Rong, and Guo, so they can all get to the other dimension Wang created for the immersive experience. As expected, the goofballs of the crew, Guo and Chen, get too excited and expectant of the things they're to expect as they pass through their realm to the new one Wong created. In the meantime, Froggy 2 is seen crying his heart out after realizing how beautiful the space Wang created for him is. He asks Wang how he got to create everything in such a short time, and Wang takes out his tablet to show him how. Apparently, all he has to do is just create pixelated images of things he wants in space and then ask his elves to come trim them all up into realistic shapes. He also changes the weather to make Froggy 2 believe in his awesomeness. Soon enough, the others arrive at the space with Zhou and the others to play around and get things done. While Chen and Guo check out the space, Wang shows up on a beautiful dragon-like thing, gets down, and carries his friends on its back before sending them into the sky. Then, he summons a nice unicorn monster named Sylvie to take himself and Sun Rong up in the sky with them. Moments after they hit the skies, Teacher Yi shows up to spectate the movie. High up in the air, Chen spots Wang and Sun Rong getting so close together and gets jealous enough to start crying. Froggy 2 tried his very best to understand how Chen felt, but I guess jealousy isn't a thing in the dog world. Back at the 4-emblem lair, Chen Nanshuan finishes absorbing all the knowledge he needs from Zhou's assistant. When he's done, he disposes of her and immediately teleports himself to Faction 60 to search for the perpetrator who destroyed his brother, Aegon. On getting to the city, he searches across the city with his soul-searching art and finds Sun Rong's aura at Wang's house. He instantly teleports himself there and somehow finds his way into the other dimension Sun Rong is in. There, he finds his brother, Teacher Yi, and Wong, who already sensed his aura in space. Teacher Yi confronts him in a fight, and Chen Nanshuan takes it. He engulfs the entire space in purple miasma and causes the entire space to go wild with chaos. Teacher Yi responds accordingly, and uses his spiritual impulses to counter Chen's purple miasma. Wang helps out a little bit and manages to dispel a part of Chen Nanquan's powers before it destroys the entire space. Teacher Yi takes a breather to check out the person who helped him dispel Chen Nanshuan's miasma. He initially thought it was Sun Rong, but then again, he realizes that this power was much better and stronger than the one Sun Rong displayed the previous time. Chen Nanshuan stops his thought process at the time and reminds him of his old age. As it turns out, Chen Nanshuan only used 10% of his spiritual impulse, and it made Teacher Yi gas out like a little boy who just benched 100 pounds. After making fun of him, Chen Nanshuan promises to kill both Teacher Yi and Sun Rong and take over the Infinite Sword faction while they're away. On the other hand, both Guo and Chen are none the wiser as they're both too dumb to even realize that the battle was real. Guo even tells Froggy 2 that he couldn't see the actors in the movie, talking like someone who has his eyes substituted for chips. To begin the second round, Teacher Yi gets very serious and gets young again to face his brother. He emits powerful spiritual impulses that break Sun Rong's spiritual impulse scale and cause powerful waves to ripple the entire space around him. Wang uses some special spiritual spells to make himself go invisible so that the waves don't affect them at all. Froggy 2 recognizes the powerful spell Teacher Yi is using and realizes that it's a life-shortening spell. Zhou is also on the ground in that dimension requesting backup. Chen Nanshuan finally responds to his brother's power and creates his Susano spell that sends a stream of negative emotions into the air. This means anyone of low spiritual strength will be affected by the powers and feel feelings of regret, sadness, or sorrow. This trick affects the two least powerful fighters in the entire space, Guo and our good old Chen. These two start crying their hearts out with Chen complaining near Xiao Yu, why he still hasn't found a girlfriend even as an adult cultivator. Xiao Yu, who was beside them, gets very irritated at two full-grown men crying like babies. Chen takes his pain a little too far and asks Xiao Yu out. As for Guo, he hugs Froggy 2 and asks him to forgive him for not finishing his homework on time. Froggy 2 initially gets a little shocked at this, but then he inhales the purple mist of sorrow and gets super missed by the fighters for allegedly fighting in his own space. Wang notices the chaos on the other flying animal and uses his purification spell to bring them back to normal. Chen gets back to normal and notices a red hand-shaped mark on his left cheek. Bro just got slapped by a girl in gym pants. Chen Nanshuan takes the fight a little further and creates two more Susanoo monsters to fight Teacher Yi. Yi also levels up his powers and creates his Mega Susanoo to showcase the Sword of Earth. As a jealous dude, Chen Nanshuan gets very distraught at his brother for learning such powerful spells as the Sword of Earth. Teacher Yi, however, lets him know that he learned the spell all on his own, but Chen Nanshuan could call BS from a mile away, and he knows well that the Susanoo Yi had on his back wasn't his. He recalls his final moment with his master at the edge of a mountain, when he went to confront his master for making Teacher Yi the head of the faction instead of him. As every annoying master would, he only spoke in parables, telling Chen Nanshuan about learning from his brother and something about their paths being very different. Chen Nanshuan reminds him that he was the one who won the faction contest against Teacher Yi at the time. Their master shows him footage of the entire matchup, and from the looks of things, the femboy Chen Nanxuan was super competitive against his brother, Teacher Yi, who wasn't even competitive at all. Teacher Yi could see Chen Nanxuan, his brother, panting and tired from the entire race, and helped him get to the finish line. Even still, Chen Nanxuan couldn't see his master's point, and he let his emotions get the best of him. His master stands up and advises him to follow a different path in life to find his way. Nanxuan still didn't get the memo at all. Instead, he sees an opportunity to end his master's life and takes it without hesitation. He gets close to his master and pushes him off the cliff to end his life. Now at the present, Chen Nanxuan creates his own Susanoo from the Sword of Heaven to fight his brother. He draws first blood and ends up crashing his brother's Susanoo in one strike. On his second strike, Teacher Yi has himself flailed to his brother's power. Wong helps him a little bit and absorbs another one of Chen's strikes. Chen Nanxuan decides to go all out for this next attack. He does the art of splitting the heaven door and releases 300 years of negative emotions on him to start his last shot. Wong analyzes the gravity of the situation and decides to reveal himself to Teacher Yi as the person he's been searching for all along. On getting to know the real person behind those attacks, Teacher Yi opens his eyes in surprise. Chen Nanxuan, on the other hand, doesn't give a damn about whoever does what as he continues making his greatest attack. When the time is right, Wong splits Chen's attack not once but twice in a row to show his strength and dominance. In the end, Chen Nanxuan gets a taste of his own medicine as he loses the fight in a jiffy without a clear difference. Once the fight's over, Wong asks Chen Nanxuan how he feels now that he's lost his entire life. Even at the point of defeat, Chen Nanxuan still refused to realize his mistake. To shut him up forever, Wong uses a special spell that only those who've learned all 3,000 ways of heaven can use, aka the Seal of Wei, to seal Chen Nanxuan for eternity, using the help of all the 6 elf leaders of the library. After getting that out of the way, Wong phones Zhou to come arrest the motherfreaker and take the idiot out of his space. Then he faces Teacher Yi, whose life was already draining, and talks to him about his ending lifespan. Teacher Yi asks Wong to let him spend his remaining moments here in the dimension so he can repair it and die peacefully. Wong helps the frail old man by granting him an extra 500 years of life to search for his successor. Just then, his friends show up to congratulate him for saving everyone. Dumbasses Guo and Chen still think the younger Teacher Yi was the actor that starred in the movie that just ended. Teacher Yi ends up getting their autographs before letting them leave. In the next 2 months, Wong's parents go for another doctor's checkup, only to find out that they're pregnant with another baby. Only Ja knows what they're gonna birth now.